friends, my name is Ashley. If you are new here, welcome. Today I decided to tell you all my story. I think that this is super important to share with you so you can get to know me a little bit better. Where is a better place to start than from the beginning of when I was a little kid? So as kids, you know, we have a different mindset because we don't know anything from the outside world yet. So whenever we put our mind to something, we believe it, and 9 times out of 10, for the most part, we accomplish it and we make it happen. As a kid, there are a couple of things that happened to me in life that I really wanted, and I made happen. From a young age, I went to Florida with my family to visit my grandparents, and we had this Easter egg hunt that we went to. And I really wanted the Easter basket, but I didn't find the golden egg to get that basket. So there was a talent contest. So I went up, I think I was 3 or 4, and I sang, "I've been working on the railroad," and I won this talent contest. So essentially I got the Easter basket. I was determined also in elementary school into middle school. I really loved fashion, not much has changed, and I decided to write a weekly column in my town's newspaper on the top 10 trends. And it was a really cool thing to have because that's kind of crazy to be a published newspaper writer at such a young age. I then discovered theater and tennis and dance when I was in, again, elementary school to middle school. In middle school, I knew I really wanted to have a lead role, and I made that happen. I was playing tennis. I really put my mind to it, and I was able to make the varsity tennis team in my freshman year of high school, and I was the only one on that team. I just put all of my drive into it. I saw it and I just made it happen. When I was in kindergarten, I had seen this performance by the singing and dancing group called Vocal Motion in my town. It's the equivalent to Glee, just as a reference for you guys. And from that moment on, I knew that I wanted to be a part of this. Like, I had to be a part of it. It was my dream. So all I wanted to do was be in this group, and I auditioned and I made it in 11th grade. Things started to shift, I would say, late middle school into high school, because you start to not be so much a little kid anymore. You're growing up into your teenage years. And I wasn't a popular kid. I wasn't really totally a nerd or a geek. I just kind of felt like I didn't fit in anywhere. I was slightly bullied. Girls would make fun of me. I was in a bathroom stall once and I was made fun of, and I cried, and those girls didn't know I was there. I hated school. I wanted to leave. I made myself sick. Would call my mom, go to the nurse's office, whatever you name it, any way I could get out of school, I would do it. I was kicked out of my lunch table in middle school. That was kind of traumatic. Anyway, to cut forward back to high school, when I was in the singing and dancing group, I thought that it was going to solve all my problems. Like, I literally thought it was going to be this big family, like all these new best friends, and I got what I wanted and realized that it wasn't really what I wanted. So I exited that group, and I decided that I was going to graduate high school early. So I did that. I threw myself right into college. So growing up, my parents were super strict. Things were kind of like, I wasn't really allowed to have friends over. It was interesting, dynamic, and I believe that during middle school and high school is when I really started to develop severe anxiety, but I just didn't know what it was. Like I said, I hated school, so I kind of made myself sick, and I would figure out ways to like not be in school. I was kind of shy. Again, because I felt like I didn't fit in, but I somehow had the confidence and the courage to get on stage to perform, whether it was singing, acting, or dancing. It was my release. I morphed into another character that wasn't me. It was somebody else, and I found peace in that. When I was in middle school, I started to do the morning announcements over the loudspeaker, and I continued to do that until I graduated high school. I just loved it. I loved being able to speak, but also kind of like not be seen at the same time. But I wanted to make an impact on my classmates' life. So I started to create these music things. Basically, I would pick out a couple songs every morning along with my other AV homeroom buddies, and I really wanted this music to play before the bell rang because I wanted it to paint this picture of a movie like The Breakfast Club, but you were kind of going through the motions, you know, in school. Going back to, yes, that singing and dancing group, it just didn't work out for me. So I graduated high school early, and then I went to college, and then I graduated college in 3 years because, again, I just wanted to get to the next place in life. I just was never satisfied. I always wanted to get to the next best thing because I thought that I would be happier at that point. Except down the road, I started to realize that just because I was getting to the next place didn't mean that that would make me happy. I was never happy sitting still. I was never happy in the present moment. And I probably didn't really realize that and learn that until about 5 years ago. So during college, a couple of things major happened. One of which was a really good high school friend had committed suicide, and this triggered something in my body that I had never felt before. I started to get these awful chest pains, and I felt like I was dying, and I would get what I soon learned were panic attacks. I would be driving and it would overcome me, and I would have to pull over to the side of the road, and I would just literally scream. I didn't understand. I didn't know why. I started dating this guy who ended up being the boyfriend at the time that I thought that I was going to spend my life with. When I first started dating him, his mom got diagnosed with cancer, and I spent my senior year of college in a hospital room with a woman that I barely knew, helping him just go through that. She got released and she was a lot better, but then shortly after that, I was about to graduate college, and my mom got really severely sick. She was in ICU for a month, maybe possibly longer than that. She had pancreatitis, and we thought she was going to die. She survived as well as his mom did, and everything was fine, so we decided to move across the country to LA. My anxiety was still super bad. He couldn't find a job. After 2.5 months, we moved back to New York. I started working in New York City again. I have a degree in radio, TV, broadcast, film, media arts, so I was in post-production for a TV station, and I really was not happy again. I was not feeling fulfilled. My boyfriend at the time had said, well, maybe you should start going to a doctor and seeing somebody and taking something. So this started my journey on antidepressants. At the time, this was the best decision because I could not function. I could not function. I went on multiple different drugs on and off. They fucked with me immensely to the point where I gained weight, and I hated my body, and I started to really hate myself even more. I just wasn't happy. I was miserable. I was depressed. I couldn't lose this weight. I felt horrible. And this was all during the time that I decided to change my career and professionally take up being a makeup artist. This boyfriend was very supportive of that. He was like, you need to get an education. So I went to a school in Manhattan, and then I went to a school in LA. So I lived there for 5 months, and I learned special effects and prosthetics. All during that time, the anxiety was severely bad, and our relationship was, it was not, I knew something was wrong. I loved him so much, but I knew something was wrong, and I was across the country, but I was kind of wearing these rose-colored glasses, and I didn't really want to believe what was happening was true. So I got back to New York. Things were off. I confronted him about it and he denied it. And then I broke into his email and I saw that there were these emails from a girl and he had been cheating on me. So I lost it. I had a total meltdown, and that essentially started the next chapter in my life of really pursuing being a makeup artist. And for some crazy reason, I started a cupcake business, which is really my first venture as being an entrepreneur. I would just bake these cupcakes out of fury and being so upset and just give them away to people, and then it became a business. Obviously, we broke up from that, but we did end up getting back together, and we stayed together for almost another year, and then we broke up again. I had lived with this person. He still remained in my life till I was probably 28 years old, and I just thought that we were going to end up together. I was still on these antidepressants. They were ruining my life. The anxiety was still so bad even though I was on this, and like I said, I could not lose weight. So I started to take Adderall with my antidepressants, which is a horrible mixture. But it did help me lose weight, but it started to make me feel even crazier. So with that being said, at the end of 2012, I decided that was it. I had had enough. I didn't want to live this way anymore. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that I didn't want to be on these drugs anymore. So I started to wean myself off. It was horrible. Withdrawal is a serious thing, and I'm so happy that I did it. It was a very dark time in my life, but I made it through. I started to realize that once I could feel again, because those drugs kind of numb you out in a way so you don't have panic and you don't have anxiety, that I really didn't like myself. My mom always used to say to me, "You don't love yourself, you don't love yourself." And I would say, "I love myself, what are you talking about?" She would always say to me, and she would quote RuPaul, and she would say, "If you don't love yourself, how the hell are you gonna love somebody else?" And it's one of the most truest quotes I've ever heard, and I still quote RuPaul to this day all the time because it's so true. So I started to realize this, and I knew that I had to make some changes in my life. I knew I had to break free of my ex because he was still involved in my life. We had dated other people on and off, and we're still kind of like seeing each other, and it was just really complicated and really messy and really not healthy. And think about, like, if you watch Sex and the City, Carrie and Big, he was my Mr. Big, and it was just my friends, I felt like they hated me. You know, they were sick and tired of listening to it. I was not happy. It was just, you know, not good. So I had at this point had to move out of the apartment that I was living in, and I moved into the shitty basement apartment in not the best area. There was a drug dealer across the street. I did not feel safe. It was not a good time. It wasn't fun. I was still doing makeup, but because my anxiety was so bad, it was really hard for me to hold down a full-time job. I just wanted to be pursuing makeup artistry, and I would do anything not to have to go to a 9-to-5. So I started waitressing these underground poker games. And I was still a bit naive at the time, and I didn't realize the things that had gone on in these games, which was 1, prostitution, 2, drug deals, and 3, their other slimy, scammy businesses, and probably every single person in the poker game had a gun on them. I just didn't know. I don't know why I didn't know, but I didn't know. I had vowed to myself that I would not date any of these guys. Like, I would not date them. When I was doing these poker games, I started to date this other guy. It was almost a year of on, off. Like, he wanted to be with me, he didn't want to be with me, he wanted to be with me, he didn't want to be with me, and then he finally was like, "Oh, okay, I'll be with you." And after 2 months, he broke up with me, and 5 days later, I saw he was with somebody else. So that kind of really destroyed me, because this started to paint the picture of a pattern. And I started to really think, what is wrong with me? Why does nobody want to stay with me? I just thought it was me the whole time, and that totally stems from, you know, being cheated on and having this complex of not being good enough. But the whole entire time I was starting to realize, well, later on I started to realize that I was allowing these people to kind of like walk all over me, because I didn't think I was worth it, because I didn't think that I deserved the best. So I was just accepting shit. So anyway, after this guy broke up with me, I made a lot of really poor dating decisions. And one of these guys from the poker game, he was a veteran. He had PTSD. And he seemed really nice. I didn't want to date him, but I became kind of friendly with him, and I felt bad for him. I always had the mentality of, well, I could help this person. I can save them. I can make their life better. No, 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 no. If you think that way now, I'm going to tell you this lesson. You cannot save anybody. The only person you can save is yourself, because at the end of the day, all you have is yourself. People can change if they want to. You cannot fix somebody. You can help somebody, but you cannot fix them or change them. They make that decision, not you. You can choose to help yourself, and I encourage you to do that first before you try and help somebody else. But don't go thinking that you are going to change somebody's life unless they really want it. Do believe me when I say that. I want to change your life and empower you and help you, but you have to want it. So, with that being said, I didn't understand that, and I didn't realize that at this point. I felt crappy about myself, and maybe at the time I did not realize this, but I started to date this human being. I was like, oh, he really likes me, he's saying all these really nice things, and I hadn't heard somebody say nice things like this to me in so long, so I was like, oh, like maybe he really loves me, okay. Well, no one else does. That's horrible. But it wasn't true. But that's what I believed, and that's what I thought. I realized that most of my life I had played the victim. That if something didn't go my way, I would blame others, or I would blame myself, or find a way to do it in a way that, like, it wasn't my fault, or blame it on myself where it was my fault. But I didn't have the knowledge or the mindset at that point to be like, whoa, I have a choice here. You know, I can change this. I didn't know at that point. After a month and a half, the crazy started coming out. This person was a sociopath, and I shortly learned that I was an empath. And a lot of times what sociopaths will do is they will find the weaknesses of the empath and feed off of them. And that's exactly what this person did. He started to manipulate me and brainwash me in a way to make me think these crazy things that you would say like, that's not real, but for some reason I believed them. He made me believe that my phone was tapped, that he could hear my conversations and see my text messages. He made me feel like a disgusting, horrible person. I wouldn't do something. I would do something to help him, and then he would blame something else on me and tell me that, like, I hurt him somehow and rearrange my words. And he did that so many times that I started to actually believe him, that I was this awful, horrible person. I also was terrified because he kept saying that he was going to kill himself. And as I had mentioned before, knowing that, you know, another friend had committed suicide earlier in my life, my anxiety was crazy high. I was not on anything anymore. I was having panic attacks all the time. I wasn't sleeping. I was living a literal nightmare. And I was trying to save this person who served our country that I felt so terrible about. At the time, I didn't realize at the beginning that he was on drugs. He was taking opiate pills. And I then soon learned that he was getting high a lot, and that explained things, but I still didn't understand his behavior at times. I was just terrified. These suicidal things that happened were extremely frightening. I pulled guns out of his hands, nooses, knives. I one time watched him take a knife and go down his arm like this and watch the blood come out because he wanted to try to kill himself. It was horrible. I totally and completely was living my life in total fear. He hated my dog because my dog got most of my attention. And he one day took him out, and I told him to just let him go to the bathroom really fast. And he came back in the middle of the night, and Zeus was bleeding out of his eyeballs. He almost died. If your pet does not like somebody, chances are there's a reason. I'm so thankful and grateful that Zeus is okay, and I thank the universe every single day for that. That was one of the scariest things I've ever seen in my entire life. And it was later confirmed that he physically hurt him on purpose. I was constantly being blamed that he was going to kill himself and it was going to be my fault. And one day I was getting novel-long text messages, 4-minute-long voicemails, telling me all the ways that he was going to kill himself. So I called the police, and they arrested him at his job, and they brought him to the psych ward. He somehow got out of the psych ward and broke into my apartment at 5:30 in the morning and threw me up on the kitchen counter with his hands like around my throat and told me that he was gonna fucking kill me. I literally thought at that moment that I was going to die. And I screamed, and I started crying, and I've never shaken like that so much in my life. And he stopped, and he apologized, but he was a monster. I can't tell you all the things that he put me through because there's so much more than just that. I only really was with him for about 6 months. I was getting evicted from that apartment that I was living in, and I started to beg my parents for help. I didn't really have much money because he made me quit the poker games. I was too afraid to go and waitress them. So I started working at Starbucks and not making enough money. He was getting government assistance, so my parents told me just move in with him, and I was begging them no, like I knew I was going to die if I did that. So I moved in for a week, and it was really bad. So my parents finally realized and then helped me get out and helped me get a new apartment. So I moved into that new apartment, and things started to get better and brighter. However, he was still harassing me and kind of weaseling his way back into my life. I was in therapy. It was just, I knew I had to start to change my life and shift because I was given a second chance. I had to get a restraining order and the cops involved. He didn't care. He would still come and harass me. He would still call my phone. He came at me with a knife one day. It was just a mess. Until finally, I smartened up and I hired a private investigator. And after that, I never heard from him again. So through that experience, it was the wake-up call of a lifetime. It was so abusive. And I said to myself, how the fuck did I get here? How did this happen to me? So I started to reflect, and instead of blaming him and blaming myself this time, I started to just forgive myself. I forgave myself for all the things that had happened, and I forgave him. Not to his face, but I forgave him. I knew it was my time to take my life back. So I started to do tons of research. I found Gabrielle Bernstein. I found Doreen Virtue. And I started to read a lot of books on self-help. I started to do daily gratitude lists. I started to do affirmations. I would look in the mirror every day and tell myself, I am beautiful. I am beautiful. I am beautiful. I am loved. I am loved. I am loved. I am awesome. I'm awesome. I'm awesome. And at first, I felt so silly, and I didn't believe myself. Literally didn't believe myself. Thought I was lying to myself. But then an interesting thing started to happen. I really started to believe it, and I started to feel good. And I started to feel happy. And I couldn't tell you the last time I felt happy. I also started to do meditations and go to yoga classes. I was reading more. I was doing EFT, which is tapping, to tap out my anxiety. I was using essential oils. I discovered Reiki healing, which is energy healing. So I put myself in classes. I started doing breath work classes, which also releases, past traumas and things like that. I started to put the law of attraction into play, and I started to trust the universe. And when I did that, my life shifted so much. I rediscovered crystals. As a kid, I had so many. I had this huge collection. I went back to my parents' house and I asked them to take them out and give them back to me. And I started to collect them again and learn about them because they started to make me feel really good. Throughout all of this, I woke up and I started to really believe in myself. And I started to really love myself and take care of myself and trust myself. I knew that my purpose was to tell you this story. Because you're not alone. I want to empower you, motivate you, inspire you, encourage you. That you have the power to do anything you want to do in this life. It's never too late to take control of your life. Never. It doesn't matter what age you are. All we have is right now in this moment. The past, it's the past. Tomorrow, it doesn't exist yet. You do not have control over that. It took me a very long time to understand that and accept that. And I do my best every single day just to be in the present moment. Your scars don't define you. They helped create your story. They made you stronger. They're making you stronger. Because if you haven't gone through shit, you won't have a story to tell. We all have our shit and we all have our traumas. I know that we all do. But again, it doesn't define who you are. Anxiety and self-love are two things that I know that I will continue to practice and push for myself every single day of my life until the day I die. My mission to share these tools that have helped me with you, to guide you and to help you through your everyday life, your career, and relationships to be the best version of yourself and to be successful. I survived something horrible and abusive. And I'm here to tell you that no matter what you're going through, no matter how bad it is or not how bad it is, that you can create the life that you want, the life that you dream of, the one that you envision. You have the power to do that. The magic is inside. It's always been there. And I want you to believe that. Whatever your battle may be, just know that there's always a light and there's always a rainbow. I promise you, I'm living proof of it, and I'd really love to help you get there. The world is truly an absolutely beautiful place. It's what you make of it. It's how you perceive it. If you want to create the most magical life, I'm here to tell you that you can. You can create it. I promise you. Thank you so much for listening to my story and taking this journey with me. It was not the easiest thing for me to film this, but I did it for you so that you know that it's not always rainbows and sunshine, and we all go through things, we go through difficult times, but that does not mean that we will not blossom from them and become the best version of ourselves. We're growing and we're learning every single day, and I hope that you will come with me on your journey and let me help you with the tools that I know. You are magical. Do not let anybody tell you that you're not. You're beautiful and you're amazing. I love you, and I will see you guys soon. Stay magical.